Which one's ACAM? I'm assuming that's ACAM.
Right here. Mate, it's all natural. It is all natural. I don't know if you believe me. I don't... All right, show me.
You're Johnny Bravo.
Johnny Bravo.
Dude, I'm not even joking. Give the guy, look at the hair.
Hey there, little mama. Isn't that what he used to say?
I have no idea.
It's not the first time I've had it, actually.
It's not?
No.
Okay, good for you, mate. It could be worse things.
That's right. That's right. Who do you get? Who have you,
mate,
other than looking like Dan Churchill?
Yeah. Ash Ketchum from Pokemon. I've had that a little bit.
Yep.
When I shave my beard in particular, and probably when I talk, when I'm not putting on this accent and putting on my actual accent, which is a very high-pitched voice.
Yep.
Who else? I think that's about it. Cartoon character-wise, that's what I get.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, sometimes I get like the Australian Jonas Brother, which is kind of a compliment. My brothers just give me shit for it.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Dan, here we are, mate. The Dingo Mafia Podcast. Little do you know that there is a seed of this that came from conversations we've had in the past. I'm going to go back and talk about how we met first, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the seed of the podcast and where that idea came from. But I remember meeting you at Hell on the Hill in Maine, one of Jesse's events. I was sitting there having a conversation, and someone said, "Oh, you should meet Dan, the other Aussie here." And I turned around and you were 10 feet away. And I said, hang on a second, I'm the token Aussie here. What are you doing? And that was the start of the camaraderie that happened. And it tends to happen whenever you meet Aussies. So here we are. But that was a cool moment that we had. You were working on, I think, your Charlie Street, the meat alternate product at the time. You know, you were tapping away on the computer and working that weekend. And we saw each other on the course, and it was cool. And, you know, we've been mates since then. Yeah,
mate, it's crazy when you do... Like when you're across the pond or you're on the other side of the world and you meet someone where you're from, it's such a, it's a cool moment because all of a sudden it's as if your world is relatable even further with someone. And also you appreciate, because then you think back like all the things that took you to get to where you are in this country, you appreciate that is the same thing on the other side. So you always have this connection of just support, and empathy, and it's really, really cool. And then you can also talk coffee and AFL, and everyone knows exactly what you're talking about.
That's right. Footy and flat whites.
Footy and flat whites could be the new name of the podcast.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing, you know, and I alluded to it, but you and I, we did some brand stuff together from a brand we worked with collaboratively, and during that process, you and I were chatting, you know, every few days, and you were just as interested in the stuff that I was doing as I was in the stuff that you were doing. And you're probably the busiest man on planet Earth sometimes, given your social media and all the things that you've got on your plate. But that was another thing. And I think that's where the seed of the podcast came, where Aussies, that camaraderie and that shared commitment to knowing that we are far away from home. But that allowed me, and that gave me the impetus to think about who are the other Aussies who are making an impact on a global scale, but are there to bring other Aussies along and open doors and open networks and make introductions. And I think that's something that we are good at. And I think that it's something that we get joy from. But I'd love to hear your perspective. You've been here 8.5 years, I guess now, or maybe longer. Who are those folks that helped you along your journey, particularly from when you come from Australia and you didn't really have a name here?
Yeah, no one knew me. It's so true. You know, the idea to get to America is there's so many barriers, man. There's so many, and it's not just America, but globally. You know, there's only 27 million people of us now. Like, and there's, to say that, to perspectivize it, that you got like 50 million in America, whatever it is, and we're such a small group, but we're mighty. Like we say in the industry, in the F&B industry, the reason why we have to pay such high wage in Australia is because of just the fact that, you know, one, we need the skill set for 5 people. Whereas over here in America, each person just does their job on one trade specific. For example, in the kitchen, you know, I had people who didn't do anything but their job.
Yep.
And what was the least outlined for them. But in Australia, it's like whoever can do it, whatever it is, get done. And that's a mentality I think that we thrive in over here, because people look to us and go, wow, they just do so much, or they're able to just get shit done. And that's just our mentality. We've always been hard yakka, in my opinion, particularly the ones who go across the pond. And getting over here is one thing, and then you got to stick around. So like, getting a visa is one thing. Like, it's actually really hard to get a visa here. People think it's easy. It's like, you got to have a lot of things in your, it's a line up for you to happen. And I had a lot of people that supported me to get here. Like, I look back and go how naive I was with the idea of getting to America.
Yep.
Because I always loved the idea of being here, but it wasn't until like I was 24, 25, it was like it became a possibility. But in order for it to happen, I had to have like a couple of major contracts come through that allowed me to have my O1 visa. Now, if I look back on that, I had to have someone who's connected to a publisher over here, which is far-fetched. It's like really far-fetched to say that. So in Sydney, and someone had a publisher over here, a major publishing group, to be connected to that person, to then get an intro to that person, for that person to then say, hey, we want to meet Dan. And then I had to fly over, meet them. And I remember when I was in the elevator with my friend's friend, who's now become one of my dearest friends. His name's Mark. And he's like, he's from Arkansas. And he's like, after meeting with the head of that publisher, they're like, do you know what you've just done? And he said in an Arkansas accent that I will not try and repeat. But I didn't, because I was so naive, and not in a bad way. I was very grateful. I didn't it wasn't as if anything came to me easy. It was more like the fact that I just didn't know the level of scale of America yet. And I was like, before I even moved. So I had that. That's one meeting that just came about. There was another one where I got that meeting. And as a result of that meeting, my manager at the time, Lance, who worked extensively well, had to find another contract, and he got one through Disney. And he had to use his old contacts to find Disney. And then he managed that relationship, and eventually they signed me. It's like all these things to happen. And I'm just one example.
Yep.
So, and they're two people who are specifically directed to me. But in order for that to happen, there's probably 3 or 4 people on the other side. So, there's just so much that goes into it that upon reflection, I'm like, I'm now here. I've got a green card after so many years. But you do not take for granted how hard it is to get here. So that is one thing you'll notice is when you do meet another Aussie, you do want to know their story, because you know how hard it is to get here.
Yep. But
also you want to support them, because you know what it took to get here, and then how hard it is to stay.
Yep.
It's really hard, not necessarily just like re-up your visa, but it's a different type of place that you're used to. There's no stretch of beaches in Sydney in New York City.
Yep.
I'm used to grassland and rugby fields. Instead, I've got high rises and the West Side Highway, which is nice. And financially, it's expensive. So, you just got to it's really hard to stay.
Yep.
So you just through the years, if you want more of these young Aussies who come through, you want to grab onto them. You want to be their eucalyptus tree as a koala and say, hey, you got this.
Yep.
So
yep.
Even if it's like as little as how to get a credit score going.
Yep.
It's little things.
It is hard. And you're recently back in Australia, and I know that the draw is always there. It's not so much for me anymore. I've got kids here, and my life is here, forever. But for other Aussies who come, and the ebbs and flows of life in New York or London or wherever you are, it's the draw to go back to Australia is strong. And every time you go back, you probably have a moment where you're like, maybe I could just come back. But you were just there for the Sydney Marathon. One of the things that I loved about watching that and you going through that was you being able to share that experience with your mates from here, your American mates, people from around the world. You're able to showcase your hometown and your hometown marathon. Tell me what that was like to be able to share that experience with some of your mates. Yeah, that was a really cool project. So I went down to Sydney to run the Sydney Marathon on behalf of iFit. And so what I did was I had a crew of about 6 to 7 people running after me the whole length of the marathon. Their job was to record me, and I was to host to the camera as if I had a digital audience watching me. And now that I think it will be released on Australia Day 2025, that will be available for people to follow me on their platform, on iFit's platform, to then run the Sydney Marathon on whatever treadmill they have. So I think being asked to do that
for what will hopefully be the 7th major marathon, but more importantly, my Sydney, like city where I'm from, was a tremendous honor. And something that I talk about, you know, being grateful for the little things because it makes the big things all the more awesome. And this is one of those big things, you know, came full circle. I left the beaches, you know, people knew me in Sydney. They started to get to know me for my brand. No one knew me here. And so what I found though is there was a bit of tall poppy syndrome, and still is obviously today, of like that, you know, what that is in Australia. But coming here and struggling and then grinding it out brick by brick and you know, going through the motions that everyone goes through, to then be asked years later to come back and represent my country again by promoting our city and our country, that was a tremendous honor. Like I hold that as like such an unbelievable thing. I'll go look back on my career and be like, that is so cool. But then, as you alluded to, I got to share it with my friends who had made such a beautiful relationship since being here in America. And, you know, I've been here for so many years. They show me their cities. They talk about their families. I see their families. I see all of that. And finally, I get to do that to them. So I get to show them the harbour, the beaches, my favorite restaurants, my favorite cafes, like what I did. And that was so sick. And even in the best part to cap it all off is they got to meet my family.
Yep.
And my family who rarely get to see what I do. And it's a weird thing to say that, but you know, what I get to do, like mum's was at my former cafe. She came in, you know, but at the restaurant, which I was at, like they never got to come to that. But then all the video content, the TV stuff, like mum and dad never really grew up in that world. And it's not like, you know, anything of interest to them. So when I was finishing the race and I'm running down towards the most beautiful finish to any major, in my opinion, which is going down Macquarie's Chair, and you're looking up and you see on your left-hand side, you can see the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and on the right, you see the Opera House. It's beautiful. Yep. I see Dad there holding his camera, his iPhone or his respective, smartphone, and Mum there next to him, and they're cheering. And it's funny because Dad was never the camcorder dude. Like he was always in the rugby field, like arms folded rugby dad, Aussie dad.
Do better.
Oh mate, yeah. But then like to see that and see them smiling and watching them finish a marathon, but finish it for like a work thing, but a project with the camera crew behind me. I'm like, that is so cool.
So cool.
That mum and dad get to see that finally. And my brothers were actually halfway through the race. They were on Pitt Street. So I got to they were just like, yeah. So that was really cool too. Funny story is classic dad and mum. Dad didn't actually hit record button. So we don't see the finish, but I didn't care. It actually made better.
That was better for you to be able to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I didn't care, but yeah. So mate, that's a perfect example of why it's important to be grateful for the little things.
Yep. Love that. Tell me a little bit more about the journey to get here, because you had mentioned some of the challenges or the opportunities and the things that went your way to make it happen. But there was a lot of work that got up to that point where you got the meeting with the publisher and you got the contract with Disney. Tell me a little bit more about what that was like for you in Australia, going through the ranks and trying to find your niche and trying to find your angle within the space in Australia.
Yeah, man. So I guess like when I had, this is the pretty early days of social media, but I registered that there was a brand that I love, which was like, you know, cooking, surfing, that health kind of conscious brand. And that's kind of what my life started out like in the social world and in the media world. And that was after, you know, cooking at home. I'd, you know, been in the fitness world just with my master's degree. Jumped into kitchens after some success in the media and, you know, became a professional chef, just working my way up the line. But the media side, as I grew with it in Australia, I registered that it was going to plateau at some point because, you know, Australia's a small place and America was always something that I was interested in, just, you know, watching movies, American Pie, you know, Remember the Titans, some classics. Yep. And I found myself going, well, how do I've somehow got to be there for that. And, you know, we really thought about what this would take. And it just turns out that the first couple of books that I self-published were interesting enough for one of these publishers just out of the blue. And, you know, it's crazy to think about this in comparison. Typically how it works for a publisher of any size, small or large, is you have to go through I would say you have to go through so many pitches and proposals with a certain type of editor. That editor will then have to, propose it to their entire team for that to then, be processed as like, okay, we're interested. Because I'd self-published 2 books and they both did pretty well. They actually did very well in Australia. I then had numbers behind me, but again, I didn't think about this at the time. And so for me to get that, as I said earlier, to get that meeting was extremely rare, because the meeting was with the person who was the head of the actual publishing house in America, like big one. And so I skipped like 7 steps, and it was like I got an answer pretty much within a day whilst I was still in New York that they wanted to sign me, which is so rare. But again, like for me going, oh, it's cool. I'm going to sign another contract. And like, you just don't know, because I'm from the Northern Beaches of Sydney. I'm still not in this world. Like I don't know. But then I got here after signing that deal with Disney as well. And I've gone from somewhere where everyone knows me. I have my family, I have my friends as support, to landing in New York in cold winter and not knowing anyone. Yep. Like I remember rocking up to Bluestone and getting coffee, and that was like my social. Yep. That was like my social love. Like I could feel everyone. It was the only time I felt related. I love the city. I love the adventure, but I pretty much traveled from, the apartment I was staying at, which was on a couch at someone's house, to then that coffee shop and back. I did that for like the first couple of months. Yep. Obviously went to the gym as well, but like I wasn't earning much money at all. And I had to be really careful. I'm like, I didn't want to tap into any of my Australian dollars. That's my rule. I'm like, I don't want to tap into that.
Right.
And
probably because it wasn't worth much at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Still not worth much today. But yeah, man, like, and then over the months that ensued, I started to pick up an understanding of the place. But that's what's really hard. Like, growing up in Australia, everyone relates to you and everyone's interested in the things that everyone's not necessarily interested, but the content you put out, or the way you position yourself, is easy to relate to that person. So when you go to America, everyone's like, oh, they love an Aussie. Look, they do love an Aussie for about 15 minutes, but then you've got to have what's called sustenance, or something that's going to keep them interested. Your accent's only going to do so much. Yep. And so that was something I had to truly learn. I couldn't just talk about rugby league and AFL and coffee, because they don't relate to that. They don't understand what it is. Particularly in New York, where they haven't got much time. And so, I learned the hard way. I made a lot of mistakes, like both in media and in meetings, and even on my social platforms. Like, you really forget how you're starting again, and you have to catch your ego and be like, dude, you're a nobody. Like, just be okay with that and start again. And so there was multiple times where I had financial things slip through, or jobs slip through because the brand would pull out halfway through, realizing maybe I wasn't the right fit, or they lost money and then all of a sudden couldn't afford it. And so all of a sudden, like, financially, it was getting super tight. There was one moment that was extremely testing, where I'd signed a lease, and at the time it was like, for a 1-bedroom in Greenwich Village, it was small. It was like $2,800 a month. And my friend's like, how the hell are you paying $2,800 a month for that 1-bedder? We now look back and go, $2,800 a month for 1-bedder is...
Yeah, sign me up.
Sign me up. But yeah, I didn't have much money, and that was crazy. But what happened was, the reason why I signed it, because I got a commitment, a heads of agreement, to pretty much head up this Australian food court concept down in Waitai. Yeah. And, I started working, and it didn't... Nothing essentially happened, because the business kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. So they couldn't pay me any money, but I didn't know that. I was working for them for about 3 months. Yep. Couldn't get paid. Yep. So I was waiting for my first check, and all of a sudden they're like, Dan, we're going to have to let go of this agreement because we still waiting on Dingo, but thanks for working for us, and cool. And I'm like, cool, and they didn't pay me any money. Yep. So like, here I was waiting for a pretty decent check to come through. At least that, like, even at the worst, okay, can't work here anymore, but at least they pay me for the backlog. Yep. Never happened. Yep. So then I'm like, okay, I can't make next rent. So then I had to, like, all of a sudden the next day I had to get out of the apartment, go sleep on another couch until I got jobs going again. And that's the testing time. I remember my manager was like, dude, do you want to come home? I want you to come home. Yep. He said, I want you to come home. And I said, like, it wasn't even like, oh, umming and ahhing. And it was like, no, it took me so much time to get here, the work. If I just go home, I'm just going to come back and relax and then try and get back over. I'm like, I want to be here. And that's what we say about Aussies who want to stick around. They're willing to put the grunt work in, like do the unsexy shit. And, you know, a perfect example I'm one of many examples of this is that the Aussies that stick around are the ones that get through that shit because we all have to push shit uphill. And so that was a major stepping point for me. Like after that, you know, you back a lion into a corner and you see what happens. And from there it was like, okay, I'm stronger than this.
It was the impetus you needed.
Yeah.
You said something interesting and I on the last episode, Patty Steinford said that the Aussie accent gets you 10 extra minutes in a meeting. And you said it gets you 15 extra minutes before you have to actually show the substance you have behind the work. So for me, I think there is that opportunity that is given to Aussies. Have there been instances where you being an Aussie has actually hindered your progress?
Yes. Like there are so many things I missed out on just because certain companies or projects don't think I'm the right fit for their campaign. Or like there's been countless times where I jump on a meeting with maybe the PR company, but the PR company are based in New York. The company's based in the Midwest of America, and the Midwest get off the meeting and go, we couldn't understand a word he was saying. And you're like, well, I didn't know that, but the PR company gets like, you're 3 meetings in by this time. You're meeting with the PR company, maybe the production company, and then all of a sudden you get to the final meeting to meet the brand, and they walk away going, oh, and you're like, that's just the way the business is, and you gotta learn. Nothing's a sure thing until it's a sure thing.
You talked a lot about, people looking at your social media presence and the thing you've done on TikTok and Instagram, and you've got a great life. You know, you have a great life. You've built yourself a great life, but it hasn't always been rosy. You talked about those challenges you faced. You talked about not being able to pay rent. You've had closures of businesses. You've had things that have not worked out the way you want them to. How do those experiences and the quote unquote failures impact the way that you move forward? Is it fuel to get better? What are the lessons that you learn from those experiences? How have those mistakes or things that haven't worked out helped progress you to where you are today and into the future?
Yeah, like everything I say comes from experience, not from necessarily that I'm right. So I always make that clear. It's like if someone wants my advice, I'm like, I'll give you my perspective. And I'll tell you through experience what I have learnt, whether that's the right thing to do or not. I just want to let you know the lessons that I've learned from making mistakes. And I can tell you this, like for all the success people see, there is probably 10 times as many failures. You know, like I just bought an apartment in New York City, Manhattan, and that was a pretty cool milestone, right? Not because like I don't live a glamorous life. Like I'm not very, what do you call it, materialistic. But it was a milestone because mum and dad wanted all their sons to buy something. So it was more the fact that I could finally sign off on something that mum and dad always wanted to achieve for themselves. And upon reflection of all the things that we all do, it's like I've learned so many mistakes over the way that it was really awesome to finally sit back and appreciate the hard work mum and dad had done, and they struggled. And then for myself to go through some same things, and I'll continue to do that, but still achieve this milestone. So the lessons I learned along the way are so many. And I have failed at CPG before. I have failed at many businesses before. I failed in live television many times before, in TV. Like I've done everything wrong. And, you know, at the age of 35, I have failed so many times so that it has allowed me to be not wise, but have the experience to give the right, or at least my perspective. And so, you know, when I look into new options and deals or terms or opportunities, I now look at it with a different lens. And I'm able to be super intentional with those. Where you first start out and you're like, oh, I'd love to do that. You
take anything that comes your way.
Which is as you should. Like early days, your yes spectrum should be this. Now my yes spectrum's like this. Only because though I've learned the hard way. You know, people starting a drink business, like a ready-to-drink business. I'm like, it's one of the hardest industries. It's exciting. Yeah, you jump into the...
It's cool. It's cool. Go to the events, you go to the things.
100%. But do you know the margins they make? Do you make money? How much money it costs? Tiny. Who you're competing with? Like, I know that through businesses that I've invested in. Like, you know, it's it's really, it sounds like it's easy for me to step back now and have all this, but it's easy now for me to know these decisions with the drop of a hat because of the amount of failures I have made.
Yep. I love your perspective on it, and I think it's inspiring. The last couple of years of my life have been challenging. There's been ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and things haven't always gone my way. And I think this is a part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, is just to get back into action and to get some positive momentum, to meet and re-meet and re-engage with great people and build that network. Because it is easy to get stuck. It is easy to get into inaction. It is easy to think about what will people think or what will people say if something doesn't work out. And I want to go back to the tall poppy syndrome. You talked about it. We brushed over it. It is a big part of what us as Australians, we have a term for it, right? Like we have language around it. I think that also breeds a little bit of inaction in people where they're afraid of what other people will say or what other people will think. And I know you've built a presence online. You've done a really amazing job of building a digital presence, which allows for tall poppy syndrome and the haters and the trolls access to you that you wouldn't have if we met on the street. Tell me about how tall poppy syndrome has impacted you negatively, maybe when you were younger, and how you move past it now, or how you deal with it now to stay moving towards your goals and moving towards your dreams and not really giving a fuck what people say.
Yeah, look, I'll be lying if I said still doesn't affect me. Like, even as I record this podcast with you and we're going to have an audience of Aussies, it's going to some people, sound as if I'm an arrogant person because I'm telling things as a matter of fact.
Yep.
And that's part of the fact that I've learned to be a New Yorker in that sense of like, people actually want to hear who you are. And when they ask a question about what you do and how good you are at that job, they're actually asking, not because they're waiting to give you shit afterwards, but because they're genuinely interested. The difference though is like, if you said to me, how good are you as a chef? And I answer a very honest thing. I'm going, I'm actually really good.
Yeah.
Aussies back home going, fuck, this guy must. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas Americans would be like, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like, when can I eat your food?
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I have my two brothers back home who would probably be, laughing at it. But the reality is, everyone listening going, fuck, he does sound like a wanker.
Yep.
But I'm not that person.
Nope.
But I'm just answering a question. I call it the Roger Federer response. Roger Federer is unbelievable at answering a question honestly. If you listen to him when he was breaking down his games at post-press, the press conferences afterwards, they'd be like, how'd you play? He's like, look, dude, first set, I was really finding my form early. And then by the second, I actually lost out a little bit. But, like you can see, my forehand was coming back good. And that's why I won in straight sets. And you look away and you go, far out, man. Like, really humble, really nice, but still was honest.
Yep.
And so I've had to learn to still deal with that and be okay with it. One of the biggest things I learned early though is like my first media appearance on Good Morning America, I was asked the same question. It's like, Dan, you've written all these books, you've done all this stuff. And I'm like, in my head, as an Aussie, the only thing you ever taught to was like kind of talk down to it.
Yep.
So they were like, what do you think of yourself at like the age of X? You're pretty good. And I'm like, I just like to cook. And they're like, I'm going to cut to a break. And I'm like, cool. Everyone's like, and I walk away and the producer comes up to me. I was like, do you not really think that much of yourself? And I'm like, we don't know if we can have you back on if you're not going to speak honest about who you are.
Yep.
And I'm like,
stand in your power.
Yeah. Next one came on, same thing again. I'm really proud of what I've done. I'm representing my country. I get to come over here and it took a lot of hard work, but I'm finding my feet. And I definitely think, I'm trying to change the game and I'm seeing some success. That was how I honestly felt. Still slightly humble, but I was speaking more honestly to it. I've never not been like, they've asked me back ever since. It's great.
Yep.
But that's my point. Like, I constantly still have the Australian in me. I'm also still surrounded by a few Aussies here, but even them, we're so supportive of each other. Like we breed the success around us by wanting to be around those who also support the same in us. And so how do I deal with it? I have to block it out, and I'm getting better with it. Obviously over time I have, but I'm still the Northern Beaches kid.
Yep.
And it's not the fact that because I no longer do it to people, which is awesome. It's the fact that I still cop it a little bit.
Yep.
And I just have to be like, dude, it's okay.
Yeah.
My brothers are fine. And my brothers are actually, to be honest, as they've matured, they don't give it. They're still my brothers.
Yeah.
But they're actually like, they'll text me and like, dude, this is awesome that you're doing. Like, we just saw you did this. This is unbelievable. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So, and that's where like going back to Australia can sometimes be really tough because it's really hard to relate to a lot of my old school friends because they're still in that way, which is fine. But like when you sit down and have a beer with them, at Wharf Bar, they ask you how life is and what are you doing? And if you wanted to be honest about life and what you're doing, they just want to like give you shit the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't really want to go have a beer with those people because it sucks because the whole time you're just getting given shit.
Yeah. How do you protect your energy? I know you're going to go back and you're going to have a beer with your mates and you got to go back and see your family and those things are going to happen. But you are so busy. You have so much on your plate, good or bad or indifferent. How do you personally protect your energy? What's your safe space? How do you, is it your girlfriend? Is it your dog? Is it your new apartment? How do you protect and preserve that energy? What's that safe home base for you?
Yeah, look, home is, like my apartment is definitely a safe space. And to the point, like I'm investing into it to make it the ultimate safe space, like putting the things that I want in there, like the kitchen and the health zone, if you will. But I also think it's the people that I surround myself with. My friends who I work out with, obviously Milena. Like Milena is just this, it sucks for her sometimes because she comes back from work and all of a sudden, like all I want to do is just like, I think a lot of guys are like this, to be honest. We're pretty bad at it, but girls want to talk and we're just like, can we just be present and just like not chat, but like
sit next to each other.
I'll hold you the whole time. Like I'll put my hands in your butt and like just hold you. And not the best thing as always, particularly when they want to know what your day was like and all the things. But like, and of course, Maverick, it sucks that he can't understand me, or maybe he does and I just don't know, but he's like he is my best mate. Like he's unbelievable. In being that like support for me in times where I just need my bro time. So yeah, I've learned to put principles in place to support, my time but also most importantly, like I always say this, you have to look after you so you can support those around you. And I can't show up for Milena or my friends or Maverick if I don't show up for myself, because then I'm not giving them the best of who I am. To take this on a little slightly funnier note, or more humorous rather, another way that I'm able to do what I do is because I have a 7-minute nap. If I'm out with the guys or anyone really, I'll be out at a bar and I'll still fall asleep for 7 minutes.
Yep.
I'll be there and the guys now know that like Dan's
leave Dan for 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
You don't get you don't get abs in 7 minutes.
Don't get 7-minute abs until they bring out the 6-minute abs. Dude, I love the fact you knew that reference. That's so good. My brothers will lose their shit if they listen to this. They'll laugh. But like the 7-minute naps are crucial. Yeah. I'm not even a big napper during the day, but I also like working with Whoop and all these things that like this is my job is to help set people up with the principles that I live a life around.
Yep.
So like I have to live the life that I talk about, and getting enough sleep, putting yourself first, eating right, exercising, loved ones.
Yep.
It's pretty much everything that I do. Other like obviously, fortunately, work for me is somewhat of the practices of health that I do, so I can kind of get 2 for 1 on that. But I still find that's part of my life that allows me to do what I do.
Yep. Where does movement come into that? And you don't have to be humble. You're a fucking incredible athlete. You're an exceptional runner. You're strong. You just had your redemption moment at Leadville in the Leadville 100. So I want to hear more about that. But where does movement come into Dan Churchill's life and him living that lifestyle that he promotes and talks about?
Dude, it's so important, man. Like I am so grateful for the fact that I can move. People talk about movement as a physical thing. It's so much more than that for me. Yeah. Mentally, like socially, spiritually, and I'm not even that spiritual, but just getting up and going for a run around like Lower Manhattan or anywhere is just pretty magical. And learning from my injury last year to this year, I went into Leadville last year, 2023, going, I want to do this. I want to get this goal. And the goal mindset was cool. But this year I've gone into it going in 2024, enjoying the process, every step, every bit of pain. And that was really exciting for me. So it's led to like this morning I woke up and I'll get to my training plan at the moment, but like I was really sorted.
Yep.
And I got up and I'm like, I have 8K run based on my program today. And pretty much for every step of that 8K, it was like, I was sore, but like I've learned to do this thing called smiling in the face of pain. So when you get a little physical pain, smile.
Yep.
And it makes you chuckle. And then you start to think about like how fortunate you are and be grateful for that, have that step. So, obviously as you can hear what I'm saying, like movement's so important to me. And, always has been. So like now my current training plan going from Leadville to now being able to be physical again with my training with, weights, resistance and Hyrox is pretty cool.
Yeah. Funny aside, I was in New York 2.5 years ago. No, it might have been 2 years ago, 22. And you were doing a live stream from Hyrox, New York. And that was the first time that I'd heard of Hyrox. I don't know if I was living under a rock or whatever, but it wasn't, the last 2 years has obviously blown up. Everyone's doing Hyrox. But that was the first moment I saw it. Dan's running around. Where was it the Meadowlands, that one?
That was in Jersey, dude. Right. So where was that? We were in, literally just across, I think it was in Hoboken or it was in Jersey City, just over the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was super cool.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah, but so you're training for Hyrox now. I've seen on your socials that that's the next focus.
That's the next focus.
Which race? Which one?
So this is what I'm saying. I'm doing a full 9 to 12 month block.
Right.
And I'm going really intentional at it. So the first race I'm actually doing is Chicago, which is only in 8 weeks. So I'm not going to get the gains that I want to be competing at the highest level that I know I can be within 8 weeks. But I'm going in there to do a soft first race back after doing Leadville, get yourself tested again, kind of mentality. And the reason why I say this is I was meant to do Hyrox last year after doing Leadville. It was going to be Leadville and Hyrox. Yep. Had to be Leadville because I needed to do Leadville. And now I can be all in. I grew up playing rugby. That was my sport. My fitness is
I've heard you say that your first goal was to be a Wallaby, an Aussie rugby player.
Yeah. Goal was to play halfback for the Wallabies.
There's still a chance.
Still a chance, mate. You never know.
Yeah,
the way they're going, right?
Pull up on the weekend.
Never know. Could become the coach at this point.
Yeah.
No, I love that sport so much, but the training around it was somewhat similar to the way the Hyrox is. And so I was actually fitter than I was skilled. And so, I built out this ability to have this repeat sprint ability, but I've never done an actual protocol like this before. I've never done, I've done my master's degree in exercise science, and I used to train athletes as a strength and conditioning coach, both teams and individuals. Yet I never put all this stuff together for myself and never had a full-on program to better my power, my strength. So the first time ever, I'm actually squatting properly to build weight for power and being really intentional with it. So yeah, that's why I want to give it a good crack and not do 2 month thing. But be okay with being patient.
Yep.
Where the first 3 months, phase 1, is actually less about the speed, but more about building the strength. So you may go slower on your runs, but you'll get through the exercises quicker. And then the middle one's more about your skill set. And then the third one's more about the final speed. So I think it's really important to be patient. But as I said earlier about the 2024 Leadville experience, I'm really enjoying training at the moment. The people I'm training with, my friends, become so close with.
Yeah,
it's an unbelievable experience.
It's so you talk about kind of the fitness. I played footy, played Aussie rules football when I was younger, and then moved into triathlon. I used to hate competing. I used to hate playing. I just got nervous. I always felt too much pressure, but I love training. Same with triathlon. I did 9 Ironmans, went to Kona, did all the things, but it was the training that you got to do and the process that you go through and the people that you get to train with and have those experiences that I can relate to and I kind of miss. Elizabeth and I train together and we do our daily classes and whatever. We're going to do a Hyrox together as a team. But yeah, I do miss that club community camaraderie.
Yeah.
It feels like you have that, whether it's through the running you've done, whether it's through the community you've built online, whether it's the people you train with on a daily basis, it feels like you've found your rugby club, your footy club, your camaraderie in your community.
Mate, it took some time, 100%. Like I remember I'd go to Austin, I'd go to Colorado, and my friends there would have their rugby club training partners, if you will. And I didn't think, I couldn't find one here. And then, recently I've just found it in the last year with this amazing community. And it's cool to be a part of that. Like it really is. The way we support each other, the way we push each other. And that to me was like a big puzzle piece that I had been missing in the city. Because I had all my running friends and they're great. And then by the way, it's so funny, your running friends. Like I remember a few years ago, like, oh, I want to go sub 4 to marathon. And then they're like, yeah. They're like, oh, I'm going to try and do sub 3:30. And then also that's great. And then all of a sudden you get to the dude, some of these I have like my broader running group. And I've got my, like what we call the running, like this elite running group people, these dudes.
Yep.
Yesterday they hand out their qualifications for Boston. And like 6 out of the 9 dudes qualified for Boston.
Wow.
They're all freaking quick.
Yep.
But like I had that, but I never had the hard yakka hit, pushing heavy sled kind of dudes and chicks. And now I do. And it's such a fulfilling thing.
Yeah. It's a different, for me, it's a different feeling. When you're training for endurance sports and you're doing your long runs or your long rides and your long swims, there is a little bit of that endorphin release, but not in the same way of a HIIT workout. Like you can get it quickly, you can get it every day, it comes on quick, it stays around. Like tell me about that. Like how does that, you talked about movement as the mental aspect. Tell me about that endorphin rush and that feeling about when you're working out with others and you're working out to the limit.
Oh dude, there's a specific moment yesterday. So I programmed for the squad 20-minute AMRAP of 10 hang cleans, dumbbells into 15 cal erg efforts of your movement of your choice into 20 dumbbell alternating snatch at 50-pound weight for dudes, 35 for the lovely ladies. And I remember halfway through, I'm like, this is so much fun. Like it was so painful, but I was on such a high of just the feeling of like the sweat, the music, the team, and like you can't. Like that's the equivalent to like say a runner's high, which is I've experienced. Like you just have this release of endorphins and serotonin that lights up your happiness that there is no amount of money that you can put a price on for that one moment. And like this is what I live my life around. Like this is like the kind of thing that I love. Like it lights me up to get up and do. And thankfully it's something that's good for your body and good for your health. But like this is why I love the world of wellness, because the things that release the right amounts of dopamine and happiness to me are the things that I also want to give back to the world around. And whether it be food and the taste and the flavor profile of ingredients that get you so excited and your body primed to digest them, versus the wellness side, or even like just the solidarity and reading a book before anyone else is up. Like, I want people to experience that same feeling I do, because I know once they do, they'll be motivated to continue it. Whether it be by themselves or with a squad, it's something that you cannot put a price on.
How long did it take you to find your rhythm, your routine, to allow you to know that you can tap into that at any moment, any place in the world, any time zone you're in? How long has it taken you to find that?
Many years, man. I would say it's only in the last few years that I've really registered my ability to switch off, or you know what, better yet, it's become a priority. And I think that is what's the game changer for me. I used to obviously still trying to find my way in the city for many, many years and like establish the brand and like what our ethos is. And over time you forget that, you forget that the things you're saying you may be doing, but you're not doing it as intentionally as you should. And so I have this moment like, dude, just look after you, put your priorities in place. And so every week now I'm like, first thing happens is I plan my workouts based on my goals. I plan the times that I can eat that I want to cook for. And then, that is looking after me. So therefore anything else is game on. And I've put myself first. But that took me almost five and a bit years, 6 years to be in this city to establish that because of all the stimulation, the inconsistencies. Yep. But the moment I did that, the moment I became grounded and put my principles in place, you know, like I found more happiness in everything. And I saw, like, I found my support of Milena to be better. And I just show it with my friends even better.
Yep. Love it. If you had one piece of advice for someone who is perhaps on the fence, they're struggling a little bit with finding their groove and their rhythm, they maybe have big goals and dreams, they're inspired by this conversation and following you online, what would be that one piece of advice for someone who is in that position?
You know, Trav, it's pretty hard to say one piece, just given... I'll say a couple of things that come to mind. It's like, I really truthfully, I said it before in the podcast, I'm like, you start putting yourself first. And I found that when I put myself first, it opened up my creative mind. So like when I started actually training for me and then doing the work for me, whether it be finally finding time to read, that moment of solidarity and reading time answered questions that I had been previously clouded in knowing how to answer. So I think that's like advice I would say, like by putting yourself first, it can really help unlock your mind. And I really, like, I'm not even that spiritual, but that's been really helpful for me. I'd also say that, you know, it is truly unbelievable what the human body can do. It is a miracle what the woman's body can do. Like that's a whole other subject. I'm blown away by women's abilities to like give birth and just do things. It's crazy. But the human body in general, it's amazing what happens when you are motivated correctly. Now, if you're in a slump at work or you want to maybe finally take the plunge in jumping over to America and you don't know how to do it, you know, you like the wellness space, maybe you want to jump into social media. The biggest thing I'd say in that jump is jumping from a stable job into a unstable but more freer job is you can't neglect time. When you're given more time, it's the largest asset you have. It's the most important asset you have.
Yep.
And so if you make the jump, you'll maximize time but minimize finance. But if you get time, you can make up the finance. Now, this is given to somebody who's got minimal responsibilities, doesn't have children, you know, doesn't have too many things. Now I've got a mortgage. But like, point is, taking the jump is, whilst it is logical, it's more about your ability in the mind to do it. And I tell you this, like when I jumped to America and every time I got backed into a corner, if you are a lion, there's only one way out.
Right. Love it. Love it. Or a dingo.
Or a dingo. Yeah, look, to be honest, mate, yeah. Mate, has anyone said anything about the events that happened at Uluru yet in this podcast?
No, we don't talk about that.
Okay, we'll leave that to another time.
Mate, part of this, the show, and part of the Dingo Mafia podcast and me building the network is relying on introductions and folks who should be on the show. People who are doing, Aussies who are doing great things on a global scale. Who do you think I should get as a guest on the Dingo Mafia podcast?
Mate, how big's a list? How many, like, should we start naming off all the Aussies doing awesome stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got, like, obviously the Hugh Jackmans of the world, the Chris Hemsworths.
How many of these can you make introductions
for? Oh, right, you
for?
want direct introductions.
Yeah.
Let's see. That I'm allowed to? Oh, Jesus. I reckon we got to get some athletes. Surely we get some of the NFL kickers in here.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got to
that's definitely going to happen.
That's going to be a given. You got Adam Gotsis, who plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've got, we've got to try and get Paddy Mills in here when we can.
Paddy.
That'd be awesome.
Yep.
Who are some other, there's so many here. I'm just trying to, you could even get like some of the guys from the athletic club, like Dane, who started the athletic club, would be good.
Yep.
He's awesome.
We'll make it happen.
Mate,
I'll tap you on the shoulder. We'll make it happen.
Of course.
Two last things.
Hit me.
So I always like to
bring up a Johnny Bravo image of yourself.
Johnny Bravo.
Yeah.
He's a good-looking, handsome guy.
He's a very good-looking.
I like to do the intro. Sometimes it's an intro that comes from somebody to me about the show.
Gotcha.
In this instance, we knew each other, we were mates. I text you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read what I wrote to you, and I'm going to read your response back.
Yeah, cool.
And then we're going to do some quickfire questions.
I love that.
All right. So here's the text. Mate, I'm launching a podcast series. Dingo Mafia Podcast. Aussies abroad doing big things. Trying to break down tall poppy syndrome and showcase the innovation and perspective we bring to a global scale. Wanted to get your feedback and thoughts and invite you to be one of the first guests. You left me on red for a couple of days, but that's fine. Busy guy. Sorry for the slow response. Ha ha ha. Dude, I like it, but you will limit your guest list if it's only Aussies abroad. Fair. Keen to chat whenever suits, my man. So that was kind. Good feedback though. I like that.
You wanted feedback.
But
I was
you just listed a bunch. So
yeah, true.
Call bullshit.
True shout. I call bullshit when you say it. That's so true. I was just like, yeah, isn't that tall poppy syndrome in itself?
That's right.
It's like,
Wanker.
you actually, there's not many awesome Aussies abroad. Oh,
yeah,
God,
none of us. There's none of us.
God, I am a wanker. Aren't I? Yeah, well, that's fair.
Not
point.
at all.
Yeah.
All right, quick fire questions.
Hit me.
You ready?
Yep.
There's going to be 8 standards, and then I've got a special one for you. First one, Vegemite, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Great. Best Australian beach?
Oh, biased. Fuck. Oh, I'm just going to say Bilgola Beach. It's where I'm from.
There you go.
Yeah.
It trips people up, though.
It
that
does.
question trips people up because everyone's got their home beach,
Yeah,
and then
that's exactly
they
it.
might have somewhere else that they enjoy as well. I think I know how you're going to answer this one, but it'll be interesting. We'll keep it in a poll. Sydney or Melbourne?
Dude, no question, Sydney.
Right. Thought we were mates. Who is an Australian that you look up to?
Physically, Chris. He's a tall bloke. No, I'd say I look up to a number of them. I feel like a lot of athletes doing, like, you look at, say, like Danny Rick, like what he goes through every single week as he puts himself in a Formula One car, and then the media, there's things like that. Then there's like the Aussie, like, man, Margot Robbie's story is pretty incredible. Like what she did with Barbie, like that is a perfect example of an Aussie.
Yep.
She like produced that show, like that movie, and everyone said no, and she's just hustled and she's like, nah, I'm doing it. And I love the tenacity. That is a better story than how she got her first role, I reckon. That was really, really cool.
Very cool. Favorite place in the world to relax?
To relax? Italy.
Anywhere particular?
Dude, I honestly, it's almost like I get off the plane, and Milena says this, I get off the plane and I like switch into this Italian alias, and I just like, no problem, like it's the Bella Vita, like I just all of a sudden feel like there's like an extra smile and kick in my step. Yeah. And so I'd probably say like we had a really good time in Cinque Terre, like the 5 towns at the northwest. Sicily was great. Taormina down in Sicily, so down in Sicily was sick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love it. Have you been to Como?
I've been to Como.
Yeah.
The Blue Grotto as well is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite places.
Nice, dude.
Had a great time there last summer. What's one Australian habit you've kept while living abroad?
Coffee every day.
Coffee. That's a regular
Dude.
answer. If you could have dinner with any Australian, dead or alive, who would it be? Or maybe I should change it. Who would you want to cook for and then eat with?
Sir Donald Bradman.
Any reason in particular?
I'd love to like pick his brain about, I'd actually just love to understand his mentality. For him to be able to go out in the field and do something so consistently, and it's remarkable, like what he was able to do. Like he's statistically the greatest athlete in the world ever. Yeah, across the world. Yeah, and so it'd be really cool to meet him, sit down with him, and I'd maybe get some cricket batting advice.
Yeah.
If I could just maybe get 10% of his
Were you
knowledge.
much of a cricketer?
Nah.
Is that humble opinion or just
No,
facts?
I was shit. No, I was straight up. Like I was like an all-rounder, and it was just because I was fit. Like I could do anything, like not do anything, but like I could get around the field. I could, I was probably better at hitting the wicket stump more than anything. Yeah. That was it. And diving. That was it.
Yeah, I was rubbish at cricket.
Terrible.
I was great at backyard cricket.
Oh, mate.
My brother, like he'll tell you, you talk about Sir Don Bradman. Travis McKenzie is the goat of backyard cricket.
What was the rules? Like, where'd you get? Was there 6 and out? Where'd you get?
6 and out, one hand, one bounce.
Yeah, of course.
Anywhere on the shed, if you nick it, is out.
Yeah.
So you had about seven
slips
and 3 wicket keepers.
They never dropped it either.
Never
dropped it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that's a good one. What is your go-to coffee order?
Long black. Yeah. But they've got to do it where it's like the right amount of water and espresso.
Do you order it as a long black?
First time.
And how often do people look at you like, what the fuck are you talking about?
So thankfully, I've gone to these cafes enough now, and that's why I go to them, because they know exactly what I mean. But I'd say, look, when I first got here, it was an education.
Yep.
Over the years, I find that the more that Australian cafe culture has been here, the more that like the baristas have learnt that way, and they've spread out to do their own thing or work at other cafes. So over the years, it's gotten much better to get a decent coffee here.
Yep.
But I would say, first time I say it, I'll get a long black. And they're like, they either know it or they say they know it. And they come back and I got like this massive 16-ounce large. I'm like, sorry.
Bucket of water.
Then I have to go back and say what it is.
Yep.
But I'd say 1 out of 10 times is actually what it is. But the other times I have to be like I say, give me 5 ounces of water, and then ideally a double ristretto, but we say maybe a double shot of water of espresso straight into the coffee, so it leaves the crema.
Yeah.
But that's like sounds like the most diva-ish thing ever, and I'm proud. Like I say it,
it's the best coffee order in the history of the world,
dude. When I'm back to Sydney, it was like, can I get a long black? Yep, every single time.
Perfect.
I was just like, fuck. And Matt Choi, my mate, who I got learning long blacks when I was in Leadville with him, he's like, dude, long blacks. I'm like, I know. He's like, but like, dude, every single time, like, I know, bro. And he's like, so he's like, come back to America as an American now, ordering these long blacks.
Yeah.
He's like, he has to go to Australian cafes for it to happen. And he's like, I want to go here. It's the only place I understand what a long black is.
You're a cultural ambassador for American coffee. So good. I love it. Final question. This one is specific to you.
Yeah.
I want you to pick. This really is something you may need to think about, but the moment that you realize that food could be more than just a meal, but a platform for connection, culture, and even global influence.
So it was the moment that it was 2 parts to this question. The first time I actually realized it, then the first time was I actually gave respect to it. So the first time I realized it was when I'd been teaching these athletes how to cook when I was a strength and conditioning coach. And they came back to me with the dishes created with excitement, knowing they were creating meals for themselves and the nutrition was just awesome. And I was like, that was like, wow. Right? That was amazing. Yep. The actual moment though, the respect moment, was when my family and I sat around a dinner table, and there was no social media back then, and we used to chat and converse despite having completely different lives. So that was the first moment. It was like growing up probably about the age of 12, going, the power of food is unbelievable. It slows down time, creates conversation, connection, and is so important for us all.
Love it. Dan, you're a legend. This has been great, mate. I appreciate you. And yeah, I can't wait to do it again. And 200 episodes from now.
Yeah, mate. Thanks for being a part of the Johnny Bravo Mafia, mate. I appreciate it.
Legend. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, dude.